Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Outside Looking In, the podcast series wherein I, Samson Folk, talk to. It's not going to end up being 29. This is one of the last recordings, but I talk to a bunch of people about the Raptors and the team in their market, and so you can learn about the Raptors, what people think about them, and the league at large. Today, my dear friend Baker, this is our second time recording this because we're talking about the Celtics. The first one we recorded, we're talking about a team that had a bunch of things change for them. Marcus Smart is gone. Kristaps Porzingis is in. It's a bunch of change. And then we record a few days later. There's a backlog of these episodes. They get Drew Holiday. So it's been in flux. Let's get your first reaction to that because we're talking about all new stuff now. The trades. Or wait, how are you doing first, Baker? How rude of me.
Um, I'm doing good. I'm happy to be back, but it's been a bad 12 hours of my sports life, if I'm being honest.
Man, tough scene.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's focus on the good.
yeah,
People,
100%.
there's an arms race in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee obviously did a great thing for their franchise, getting Dame. And the Celtics, they anteed up. They said, okay, let's do something. There's a bit of fallout because of what happened with Portland. Portland is trying to allocate assets in the right way. They look at Robert Williams as the centerpiece of a package. They say, hell yeah, let's punch the ticket. Drew Holiday comes to Boston. He's like, they care more about the little things here, man. They're champions. This is that culture. Even though he came from Milwaukee, where he was
Yeah,
a
you
champion. But
won the champion.
early thoughts.
Early thoughts. Brad Stevens literally breaks my heart for the second time with a trade. Um, trading Marcus Smart and Robert Williams in one offseason, like I don't know how I'm feeling right now, but honestly speaking, Drew Holiday is a great addition. When they traded him to Portland, I advocated for him to be traded to Boston. So because I think the fit is very good alongside Derek White and Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis. And he's the perfect Marcus Smart replacement. You're getting a guy who's an all defensive guard who's better offensively, in spacing in a spacing standpoint, and can basically like fill in a lot of the defensive responsibilities that Marcus Smart was doing. So I think fit wise, this is perfect. But there's still a lot of question marks with the team, and the big man depth is definitely now like the biggest question mark now. Um, but yeah, I'm excited. Drew's a good player. I think him with Derek White is going to be a very fun defensive backcourt. And I expect this team to go back to their defensive identity that made them so formidable in 2022.
So, what you and I talked about on the last episode that didn't get published was it kind of seemed like the Celtics championship hopes rested on the shoulders of mostly Jason Tatum's step from MVP vote getter to like MVP winner type. And we talked about playmaking. We'll talk about it a little bit more during this podcast down the road. But it seems like to me the trades that Boston made, ceiling for Kristaps, obviously, ceiling when it comes to Drew. These are ceiling trades. You're losing some depth. You're betting on Kristaps and Horford as a front court. That's a lot of bet on health. And not that Robert Williams has been super healthy lately, and there's a conversation about his knee and kind of what happened down the stretch of the finals run, but they're making a bet on health to help them reach ceiling. Do you think that was the right decision? Or do you think, like, because from the outside looking in towards you, it seems like they weren't expecting to get over the hump because they've been to the finals, man. They're close every year, forever, every year.
Yeah.
And so they try and get over the hump. Do you think that was the right decision?
Um, I see why Brad, pulled the trigger. Something had to give. You're seeing a lot of the same problems that this team has had for like a bunch of years, which is, late game execution, just failure to, execute down the stretch of games when games get nip and tuck. So I just think he wanted to just hit the reset button and just like try his try one more swing to see like if the Jays and this team could get over the hump because this core has been like before the Smart trade. This core has been together for like a while, like
Yep.
for about 6 7 years. And in those 6 7 years, you've only been to the finals one time, and you lost in six to Golden State. So I think he's seeing the trajectory, and he's like I think he just took a swing on these players that hopefully can get us over the hump because Kristaps is a gamble, and Drew while he's more of a constant, you know he's getting up there in age, so you never know like what's up with him. So I think it was a good gamble. I think Brad traded for got good value for the players that he got, and and he got really good value for the players he sent away. So I think it goes hand in hand. I think ultimately it'll work out fine because the team has good continuity, and you have two guys who are due for like they're due for some success. Like you can't just keep knocking on the door
Yep.
and just like not like kick it in at some point. So I believe that they can get over the hump. It's just a big question mark in terms of health and execution. That's all it comes down to at this point. At this point,
It is they're an interesting makeup, the roster, because and especially when you talk about trades getting good value, I think anybody like Marcus Smart obviously had some intrinsic value to Boston, the franchise, the fan base, because he's, the first guard to win Defensive Player of the Year since MJ. He's been like the centerpiece of what they do defensively, even though I'm sure people would make the case that Tatum had started to outpace him as far as like defensive impact. It's incredible how good Tatum is defensively while also being an offensive superstar, by the way. But
yeah,
um, when we look at Marcus Smart, having a guard rotation that no longer has him, and it just means more possessions, more minutes spread across Derek White and Drew Holiday. I really like Marcus Smart. I think he's an underrated playmaker, but I think it's fair to say they upgraded. And also, when we look at their wings, it's like Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum is as good as anybody in the league as far as the wings. And then front court, as you mentioned on the podcast we did last time, Kristaps played a full season for the first time in a long time, his most games in like 5 years. Hopefully that's trending in a good direction for them. And Robert Williams is a tough bet for health anyway. It seems like these are risks, but these risks weren't made against continuity of the old team. They were made against the risks of the old team, which is, I think, the right decision making to go by. It's like, well, you didn't trade Horford because he's been the constant, and at least Horford can be there if Kristaps is up and down or whatever, or if he wins against Father Time once again, because he does that every year now. It's incredible.
it's incredible, man.
Yeah, and then Drew, for people get frustrated with some of Drew's offensive decision making. Fine, he did get like the playoffs last year didn't go super well for him. Jimmy had an unbelievable series, but he's a constant. He's around all NBA level defense. He's at least a positive offensively. And Derek White, I think, he's been underrated since he came into the league. He was really underrated with the Spurs.
Yeah,
Raptors fans were like, "Damn." When they traded for Thad and then Boston got Derek, everybody was like, why the hell didn't we get Derek instead of Thad? He's really good.
he's
This
really
team
good,
has
man.
a super high potential. They just need things to break right.
Yeah.
I do want
Quick
to talk. Go ahead.
quick point on Derek White. Um, Last season was probably the best I've ever seen him play, and it was to the point where I thought like they should have sent four first round picks for him instead of two, because it was unbelievable. Like the way he was shooting the ball, the way he was playing defense, it was unbelievable. So I expect and he cut and he shaved his head this season, so I'm expecting big things.
Welcome, welcome home, brother. See, but that's the thing too, right? Is I know Dejounte was who the Spurs ended up giving all the possessions to, and he was younger, I believe. And DeJounte ended up making an all-star game, was putting up these big counting stats like assists, rebounds, points. But as far as like impact and return on investment for giving a guy possessions, Derek White was always there with DeJounte. And just because of the way the Spurs went, he became less and less important because he didn't have the big sexy numbers for trade value and the team wasn't very good. Boston made an incredible trade to get him, and I think they're making a really good bet on being able to get more possessions out of him because he was a guy, you're like it seems like he's being underutilized. And then he gets more utilized and you're like, I think there's a little bit more we can get from there. So, there's a lot of potential here. We'll kind of dig down on it a little bit more. But before we go more on Boston, Raptors, baby. Now, as I've said before, you pay close attention because you have a lot of friends in Toronto.
I do.
Myself, the fellas, we talk every day. We crack a lot of jokes. Sometimes it seems you pay attention to Raptors basketball so you can make fun of us, but hey, you know about the team regardless. After media day, after the offseason, how do you feel about the Raptors?
Oh man. After hearing your media day questions, man, I can't wait for what's in store. Honestly, like I don't have any gaudy expectations, to be honest. I think last year, I had too many expectations and they ended up letting me down. So I don't want to go down that road again. But I think this team's just like a huge enigma this season. I can't really put my finger on it because they have good players, but at the same time, I don't think it fits well. Um, this. There's too many question marks around who's gonna be on the team, who's not gonna be on the team, who's like gonna have a good year. I don't know. If Pascal doesn't have an extension, OG doesn't have an extension, Gary Trent doesn't have an extension. This is a huge, this is a big year for Scotty in terms of just improvement of last year because he wasn't as good in his rookie season. But and you have like some new guys coming. You have Grady Dick coming in. A good a nice rookie that you picked in the lottery. So and then you have like your free agent guys, Dennis Schroeder, Jaden McDaniels. Otto Porter is healthy. He's coming back. So there's just a lot of like there's just a lot of unknowns with
Well,
this team.
let's think. What do you think is known? Like
Is
when you
known.
think, yeah,
Um, I expect Pascal to be good. He's gonna be playing for max money, so he's definitely gonna be like he's definitely gonna try to actually like play to the best of his ability. Same with OG. He's playing for an extension too, so I expect those two to actually like be where they've been at. Like solid players. Do their jobs. But I think the biggest thing is how are they going to like how are they going to function without Fred? That's my thing because I think Fred's impact last year was, even though he wasn't as good as he was in his All Star season, I think his impact is going to be missed as at a spacing span at yeah in terms of a spacing standpoint. And I know he wasn't the best at the point of attack last year, but I thought he was okay enough to stop like opposing guards. And I think Dennis is a good option at that point, they're gonna miss Fred's spacing so much. So I think how they'll look without Fred, what Scotty looks like, how the how certain lineups will work because this the spacing on this team looks very bleak on paper. But I expect a good year from Pascal. I expect a good year for OG. But other than that, I'm not sure at all. It's a big enigma for me. Like I said,
I can't think really of a team that was hoping to be good that had less sure shooting on the roster. Like if you reference back to some players, if they've shot well in the past, how well have they shot recently? And if they've shot well recently, is that mostly on wide open shots? Are these self-created looks? Are these, three-point shots in motion off of screens? Like the Raptors, for a team that wants to be good, are very, very low on movement shooting, very, very low on volume 3 point shooting, and very, very low on pull up 3 point shooting. And they have some guys who will definitely, there's going to be a couple guys on the roster who shoot well in catch and shoot situations. Some guys can improve, some guys can be better. I think it would be overly optimistic to just assume across the board everyone will improve. It's a little self indulgent, right? It's like my team is the team where everything works. But as far as like track record, you're looking at a team that has very, very little shooting. How they work around that, it remains to be seen. Darko has ideas. He talks about working out of the high post more. I'm very interested to see how that works out because typically high post actions, yes, they revolve around a good passing big. The Raptors have a glut of those. Jakob, Pascal, Scotty can all run stuff out of the high post. But high post is usually also partnered with movement shooters. The
Exactly.
Raptors have Gary. OG is a really good shooter. I'm very happy he plays for the Raptors. I love covering his game, but he's not a movement shooter. Otto Porter can sometimes, but it's been
Yeah.
like a year. And
Yeah.
even on the Warriors, he was mostly catch and shoot, right?
Yeah.
It's just very little movement shooting to kind of grease those wheels. So the Raptors are kind of going like against type. They're going a little bit ahistorical, which doesn't guarantee a bad outcome. It just means that there's less proven things to lean on. And so we're in the unknown with this
Yeah.
team, which is an interesting place to be. It's why there's so much speculation about them. I know you see it within the fan base, a lot of divergent views, like 50 wins versus 27. Most teams don't have that range of predictions. The
Yeah.
Celtics certainly don't. People probably
Yeah. Of
think
course.
like 49 wins and 54, like
Yeah.
somewhere between there.
Yeah.
Um, the Raptors having like a 20 win swing in their predictions is like kind of crazy. We'll
Yeah.
see though.
Mhm.
Um, as far as like Pascal Siakam, I know you watched some of Media Day. What do you think about uh, his lack of mentions? What do you think about the conversations that were had about him?
Um, it's tough because I've never seen an all NBA player not be rewarded for what he's done. It makes no sense to me at all. Usually, like all these all NBA guys around the league, they get like, I mean, teams have treated them with so much like glowing empathy and respect. Like Domantas Sabonis just got to Sacramento like like 2 seasons, and he plays all NBA caliber, and they instantly signed him to an extension. Like, why haven't they re-signed him? Like that's my question. Like if Masai really likes him and really believes in him, then why didn't you extend him? Like and also like and he wants to be there. That's the crazy part too. Like he actually wants to be there, and you haven't like you're continuing to just wait and wait and wait until like he's gonna be a free agent next summer at some point. So I think how they've handled his situation has been pretty weird. You know, they haven't traded him, you know, to any destination that I've seen reported. Um, but part of the reason because like I don't think they want to move him. But at some point, like this core this front office has to make a decision because you have three, like you said, like at media day, you have three core guys on expiring deals, like, and that's very uncharacteristic. Especially when they're one guy is an all NBA guy, another guy is an all defensive player. So I know I see his frustration. You know, he's not being rewarded for his very good play. He's still a very good player. He's very underrated. I don't think people talk enough about how good he is. So I think he's frustrated. I understand, but you know how the Raptors have handled this whole situation is very weird.
It is I had some pushback and like pushback is fine. There's competing conceptions of what's happening, but I saw people reference like rookie scale extensions. I saw people reference restricted free agency extensions and the Raptors not even talking. And that's why I asked Masai that question was I wanted the clear answer on Pascal specifically. Why haven't you talked to or offered an extension? Like you could say we offered it, Pascal's trying to get the supermax. And everybody would be like, that's fine. But you haven't saying we need to see something first. It's just there's not a lot of precedence for it. And as I mentioned with like the three expiring contracts thing, typically when teams are stacking expiring contracts that they want to keep, like assets, it's when they have a small cap hit, you know? It's like that Steph Curry thing, right? Like if there's a small cap hit, you opt out and then you can sign like somebody huge and then you sign your big thing after them. You're making use of bird rights. But Scotty, or sorry, Gary, OG, Pascal, like these are big cap hits anyway. So it doesn't really speak to flexibility. It's more so speaks to it being kind of like a nebulous situation. I'm very interested to see how it shakes out. At the very least, though, I think they're going to have a very good defense
Yeah,
throughout the course
they
of the
should.
season. I'm curious, this is what I want to ask you too. I talked to Aaron Edwards. He's a great stand-up comic, and he also does the podcasting over at Locked On Suns. And he said that he saw what the Raptors were doing, and it made sense to build their defense this way for Boston, for Milwaukee, and obviously both those teams have changed, and their defense is better equipped for Boston now, more so than
Yeah.
Milwaukee. But what do you make of the defense building it out? Just big guys.
I think it should improve a little bit than last year. They were very inconsistent last season, so I expect a better output. Especially with now like you have like a full season of Siakam in the fold. And also, you have a lot more bodies. Otto Porter, McDaniels, Precious. You're bringing back OG, you're bringing back Pascal. So I think, they have the bodies, to have a top 10 defense, maybe even a top five if other guys, play out of their minds. But yeah, this team definitely has the personnel and the depth, to really hang with a lot of teams defensively. It's just will the offense hurt the defense a little bit like it did last year? You're not getting enough offensive possessions where it's resulting in points, and then like you're going back on the other end, and then you're expending all this energy on defense, and then guys start to crack, and guys start to like give up backdoors, and blow bys, and guys are curling off screens, and they're getting wide open looks. So my question is like, can their offense be stable enough for them to still be formidable on defense? Because that's the thing across all sports. Like last like last night, I'm watching my football team. They can't score any points, and the other team's just walking down the field scoring every time because the offense isn't doing anything. Even though I want the defense to make stops, but you can't. Like at some point, like we're all like these are human beings. Like you know everybody's gonna get fatigued if you're expending so much energy on one end. So um, they have the personnel for an elite defense. My question is like, can their offense be competent enough for them to not have any cracks, defensively
Mhm.
like they did last year?
That's a good point, and that's Darko was asked about that at media day, right? He's like, how big a rotation do you think you need? He didn't put a number on it, but you wonder if the Raptors, like coming into the season, Thaddeus Young, if the Raptors had made certain moves, he probably would have gotten $1 million and been cut. But now this season, and particularly because of the play style I expect they'll be leaning into, he could be they could be going like 11 deep every game and having a lot of having a lot of guys be interchangeable the through the 3 and the 5. And obviously Jakob is going to handle a lot of minutes at the 5. Christian Koloko still has the respiratory issues. We'll see what happens there. But 3 through 5, there should be a lot of guys who can come in and just give you minutes. And I wonder if they cut down the minutes a lot for a guy like Pascal. down to like 34 or something, maybe 33. And there's just a bunch of guys. And like, I don't know, we'll see. It should be very interesting. A guy like Jalen McDaniels, maybe he pops off. Maybe he doesn't. And if Jalen doesn't, then maybe you get a good year from Chris Boucher. And if Chris doesn't, then maybe you get a good year from Precious Chua. And if Precious doesn't, like, there's just like a list, a hodgepodge of guys.
It's a trickle effect. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
so you just have to hope that these guys all are utilized correctly. And as you said, the big thing is not only you can help if you get back on defense even after you miss, like that's an effort thing, that's a buy-in thing. You need to be able to do that, but also you need to make the other team pull the ball out of their own bucket and start slower. And
yeah,
the Raptors, we'll see what they can cook up and craft to make sure that, they get a little bit more rest and they can get into their shell and they can call out coverages without being cross-matched and without having to do it as everyone's coming up the court at the same time. It's a lot easier to organize five guys against five guys than it is 10 guys altogether. I guess we'll see. One thing I want to talk about, because truthfully, the Celtics did go from less of a depth team to more of a starting lineup team. There is one guy I want to talk about with you, our brother, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Walsh. Uh, Great hair on that guy. Big shout out. What do you think about him for this upcoming season?
I'm excited, man. Seeing seeing what I saw in summer league made me very optimistic because in college, Arkansas wasn't a wasn't a very good spacing team. And he wasn't really able to like showcase what he could actually do. But in his first summer league game, he looked like he hit his first three, and I'm just saying like, what? And then he hit another, and then he hits another one, and another one, and another one, and he's playing good defense. He's running in transition. He has very tremendous playmaking feel for somebody his size. Um, so I'm expecting very good things. If he could just step into like that Grant Williams role a little bit, be hit his threes in the corners when Tatum and Brown collapse the defense. Play some elite perimeter defense because this team now like has. I think it should go back to its defensive identity a little bit, and I think he can very. I think his with his size and length, they could definitely weaponize him into being somebody very scary to match up on the perimeter. Because his defensive activity is like insane. I know it's summer league, and there's not much like competition there, but he looked pretty good, and I'm very excited to see what he does out on the court because there's definitely avenues for him to get playoff minutes because right now the bench it's really up for grabs for anybody to be in the playoff rotation at this moment because there's no sure seventh, eighth man right now. So he could definitely step in. If he could hit at a 34, 35% clip, I think that could work. And if his defense checks out, I think this team can be very, 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 very dangerous.
So when I was watching him at Summer League as well, like not only is he, the guys seem faster in person. You get down to court level, they
Yeah.
move quickly.
Mm,
Um, but his activity is pretty nuts. He can go, and also like he has really great technique, especially at the point of attack. Some guys just don't have it. Some guys have athleticism and they're really sloppy. The term a lot of people hear is like you open the gate. He keeps it closed a lot of the
yeah.
time. Like he knows when to slide. It's just he's very impressive. And then going from a guy who you talked about the 3-point shot, Arkansas was a really weird configuration. Anthony Black was like their lead guard too. They were
Yeah.
constantly trying to carve out spacing without having much of it. Unique team. I think Jordan shot like 27, 28% from
Yeah,
the
it was
college
bad.
line. But Raptors fans have seen quite a few guys go from like they don't shoot well at college. They make the jump immediately.
Yeah.
It's not super uncommon these days. Like some guys, they figure it out with an NBA staff. They make the jump pretty quickly. OG is a really good example of a guy who bad in college, good first year on low volume. I don't expect Jordan to be high volume, but like defensive activity, willing cutter, very clearly has finishing chops. And if the jumper comes around, then he can start to um, kind of create some of those like cat and mouse games of the closeout and the chase.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see how he can carve it out because
yeah,
he was one of the bright spots of summer league. Like he really popped off.
yeah.
Is there anybody on the Raptors, just as a final thing before we get out of here, who excites you? That's kind of what I want to know.
Probably Grady Dick, and yeah, that's probably it. Because
Wait,
he
can I
was
ask you
one
a
of the.
question? Is that
Yeah,
is that
sure.
because we're annoying about him and we're like, Grady, we
A
can't
little,
wait to see him? Yeah.
a little bit, he's a very interesting player. He kind of reminds me a little bit. He's a lot taller than him, but Corey Kispert a little bit, but not too much. But because different skill sets, but yeah, he's a tremendous 3-point shooter. Like his mechanics are very good. He gets the ball off quick. You know, I think his lateral movement is better than like people think. Especially when he's cutting. When he's attacking a closeout. I think he has good feet, footwork, and I think if he can be passable on defense, he's going to be a very good player this season. It just depends on like how good of a shooter he can actually be this season, and if he can be like what people make him out to be, then this team actually can have a lot of bright spots. Especially with a player like him. So yeah, he's a very good shooter. I'm excited to see like how he looks. Because he had some ups and downs in the summer league, but his game's not very built for that. So I'm excited to see him, and and a little bit to see like what Scotty does this season a little bit, because he had a very underwhelming season last year, and I'm really interested to see how he adjusts. Now like with Darko saying like he's gonna be the point guard this season, so I kind of want to see how that looks like. I read your piece about like how he looked in pick and roll this season, last season. So I'm very interested to see if they use more of. I think if he rejects more screens, see what that looks like because I thought he had a lot of success doing that. So I'm excited to see those two. They're probably the two young guys that I'm most intrigued by. Other than that, like everybody else, I'm just I think I expect a lot of the same. Pascal is going to be good. OG is going to be good. Dennis is going to be, what he's been. Jakob's going to be what he's been. Gary is going to provide some good spacing. So I think a lot of the team is just like, they're going to be what they are. It's just, I think those two are the wild cards for this
Hmm.
team to see like what they actually do.
And rookies rarely do they come in and have like positive impact right away, but Grady is one of those guys who you look at the marriage between skill set and team. He's one of the guys who you say, well, if he does pop off, nobody's going to hold him back from minutes. Because a lot of times, like, players are very evidently good, but sometimes teams are able to, create like, or just develop players at the same position, and a guy will be kind of, he'll have less opportunity. But Grady, if he is good, if he does make the adjustment to the NBA level right away, then we're looking at like this is a guy who very easily can find his way to minutes. So I'm really interested in that too. Okay, last question is where does Jason Tatum finish in MVP voting this year?
That's so tough. Oh my God. Um, I don't know why, but like every season these past 3 years, I've picked Luka to win. Like I've just picked him to win because I keep thinking like the Mavs are gonna be good enough. He's gonna have the stats and he's gonna win them. He's gonna win the award, but he just doesn't. I don't know why, and I keep doing it every year. But honestly, this season, I think he finishes top three in my opinion. I think this team is very good spacing wise. Giroux, I expect a lot more improvement from him in the areas that he really doesn't use a lot. I expect a lot of him in the mid post, operating, making quick decisions. Less work on the perimeter a little bit, which I don't think will happen, but I hope that happens because I think if he starts like somewhere in the mid post or like somewhere catching the ball like at the free throw line or somewhere like other than behind the arc and then him having to work his way to the rim, I think just him finding some easier lanes to just like operate. I think that'll be key for him. The pull up shooting was very bad last year, so I hope it actually just you know, kind of like doesn't regress, but like kind of regresses back to like where it was before.
Positive regression, yeah.
Yeah, positive regression. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm expecting a big season. He probably won't average 30 because there's a lot of players on this team now, so I expect maybe like 29. But yeah, I think they'll have the wins. I think he'll have the impact, and I guess he'll be like in the running. I don't think he'll win, because I do think guys like Luka, Jokic, possibly Giannis, now being with Dame, he might have an insane season. So I think guys like that will probably be at the top. But I think if he like can actually like string together a consistent few months of play and keep like going, not having the stinkers that he usually has, I think he has a very good shot. But I always like seem to just say Luka's my MVP. So because like he's like one of my favorite players to watch. Like I don't know why, because people ask me like why. It's just like when you watch him play, he's like he plays like in slow motion
He's a
when you watch him on
genius.
television, and he just gets to where he wants to go, and it's like kind of like how I want to play, when I'm playing basketball. Like just don't speed, don't play so fast. Just play at your own pace, and you're gonna get to your spots anyway. So that's why I kind of like him. That's why I always keep picking him for MVP. So yeah,
Well, bookmarked. We'll revisit this. Hopefully, Lewis wrote a great piece for the 538 about how good a pairing he and Kyrie are. They really
mm,
fit together wonderfully. I guess we'll
yeah,
see. But I guess we'll leave it there. Baker, thank you so much for
mm,
coming on.
no
People, thank
problem.
you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. There'll be more Baker on the podcast this season. He's a Celtics guy and a Wizards guy. There you have your where you live versus like the team you like best. Sometimes you can't choose, you
Can,
know.
can we do one thing?
What's
Can I
that?
do one thing? I've been saving this because I don't know if I've had the courage to actually like propose it. But I kind of want to propose something,
Okay.
a little bet for me, and for you and like the chat.
Okay.
So I think the Wizards will have a pretty good season this year. I know everybody doesn't really think so, and Vegas has their win total at like 24, which is I think is nuts. If the Wizards have more wins than the Toronto Raptors, well, I wanna make something on those lines. You can pick the what's it called you
Okay.
can pick the parameters on that, like the winnings or whatever. But
Sure.
I want to propose that.
Okay. We'll iron it out. We'll revisit this the next time we record. Maybe the first Raptors Wizards game or whatever. We'll do a podcast previewing it. But
100%.
I'm happy to be on the other side of that one. That's a good bet.
Yeah, I'm feeling very courageous.
Good. Good. Okay. Yeah. We'll shake on that. Raptors versus Wizards in the win total. All right, Baker. Thank you, listeners. Thank you. We hope
You'll
you
have to.
enjoyed it. A couple more of these to come before it's just regular preseason talk. But okay. Bye, everybody. We'll see you.